Hi everyone, my name is Miha Jagodic. I'm the founder and CEO at Bloq.it, I believe the fastest growing company at this conference. That being said, my startup journey is not finished yet. I didn't get my happy ending, so I don't necessarily feel in a position to enforce any advice, but maybe through my journey that I'll present now, this sparks for some interesting conversation afterwards. So maybe just first, what is Bloq.it? Bloq.it is the smart locker technology company. Basically, we make lockers where you then pick up your parcels or packages. I'm sure that by now you've seen some of them, or maybe some of them you even collected parcels there. We started 6 years ago in 2019, and we're headquartered in Lisbon, Portugal. Basically, I can divide our 6-year history in first 3 years and the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, Bloq.it's been one of the fastest growing companies in Europe. In those last 3 years, we've made over 100 million in revenue. This year alone, we're on a path to exceed 80 million, following 37 million last year, 17 million the year before that, 3 million before that, and so on. So that basically in practice means that we've sold over 10,000 lockers so far. We're looking to cross 20,000 lockers by the end of the year. Today, we already have over 5 million people using our lockers on a monthly basis. And at the trajectory that we're at, by the end of the year, on an annualized basis, we will already have over 100 million people using or picking up parcels in the lockers that we've provided. On those, in the last 3 years, we also grew from 15 people to 250 people, mainly with representation in Lisbon, Porto, and Paris. We're in the process of closing the largest Series B for the Portuguese company ever, and we're in the process of our first acquisition. Following this trajectory, we're now on a path when all is said and done that we're going to contribute to half of the entire parcel locker infrastructure in Europe. But of course, it wasn't always like this. Actually, the first 3 years were either exact the opposite or at least the opposite of that. If I go back into 2019, there was basically no market yet. What I mean by that is that when we try to... So the difference between back then and now is that back then we had to explain what lockers are for. Today, basically, we just need to explain why we or our lockers are better. It was also very hard to begin. It's a complex solution. It's hardware, big hardware with a lot of components. It has a software attached to it. It's placed typically outdoors. It needs to be maintained. So it's just very expensive to start, which is even harder to do if you want to present a product that kind of doesn't really have a market yet. And all that made our fundraising basically impossible at the time. Of course, also because we were, in a sense, hardware-led startup, and no one wants to invest in startup. We were also first-time founders, which now I understand why no one would invest in first-time founders, but at some point you need to be a first-time. So, and on top of all that, the only way for us to actually make it was to get a big account. So the companies we were selling to were companies on the stock market, listed even, such as GLS, DHL, Amazon, of course, GLS and DPD and all these big groups. So if I go to the first 3 years, these were basically the years of complete pain and survival. It's still painful now, but it's not so much about survival. I call this period also a tuna can period because pretty much that was all we could afford at the time. Fundraising was complicated. I mentioned before, basically those 3 years were these typical fundraising years when you contact over 200 investors and then they kind of tell you different reasons why they're not interested. We had to pivot, which is something that generally speaking I encourage startups to do as long as this pivot has some kind of rationale behind it. Mostly we've been trying to building a story and getting small wins. That in practice meant that we tried to find any place where we could place a locker, even if for free, just so we could show some kind of attraction and keep building a story. Throughout all this time, we were kind of trying to survive on loans. That's at the time I also was receiving from my father, which makes it even more stressful, the whole situation, kind of feels even more skin in the game. But also I see that it's important for me to give shout out. I see some representative from Filurush here. They were actually the first fund, or the only fund that actually saw in all this tuna can period that there's something in this team, in this business. And then kind of towards the end of this period, COVID hit. And at that time we thought, okay, this is finally going to put ends to our misery. But it turns out that COVID actually accelerated the e-commerce, and then with more packages, couriers were looking more and more into ways how to optimize the last mile delivery, and then lockers somehow, what we kind of knew it's going to happen, but was accelerated, lockers proved to be one of the best solutions to optimize the last mile delivery. And this presented us with a lot of opportunities, and one of the key opportunities for us was Vinted. So for those who don't know Vinted, it's a unicorn, the biggest second-hand fashion marketplace in Europe. And they came to us. They wanted to, at the time, make a pilot project of 200 lockers. So historically accumulated, until then we've maybe made 30 lockers. So already just their pilot was much, much bigger than what we've ever done altogether. There's a big story that you could classify as fake it till you make it. We're a bit short on time, so I cannot go into that, but we've really done everything and we went all in to win this opportunity. And this was the reference we needed. Through this reference, we were able to then convert all of the good work that we were able to put together during the tuna can period. And this contributed to then later on also close other big accounts that we serve today. So besides Vinted, with who we have lockers in France and Benelux, and now expanding to Iberia, we have DHL in Germany, Italy and Czech. We have GLS in Italy, Spain and Germany, and DPD in Germany. We're also expanding to some others with some other accounts that are not yet announced. So what we're doing today, basically, it just is challenging. We have a lot of challenges, many more than actually before. The first challenge is that the business is extremely tough. It's infrastructure, it's hardware, with software, it's outdoor, it's used by millions of people who create maintenance. So that's not easy to manage, especially on the many geographical markets. So this year alone, we are expanding to more countries that we've been before present combined. We're scaling our operations. So today we work with 3 different factories in 2 different countries. We're expanding now to 5 factories in 4 countries. We're growing the team, which has the fundamental value to the business. So this is maybe, while it seems on the paper the easiest thing, the one that we're paying the most attention to, that we're worried about the most. And we're undergoing the corporate growth. We're already seeing an opportunity to consolidate the market, and we're being aggressive in that manner. I said at the beginning, I don't feel I can necessarily give any advice, but if I would look back on the 6 years and if I would want to point out a few things that I think we did well, I think throughout the entire journey we always stick to the plan. What that means is that we were always building up a story. Everything we did went into the same story towards the same goal, that we knew it's going to be that lockers are going to be at the end the best out-of-home pickup solution for this market. We've always been focusing on fundamentals. We think that it's never too late to focus on fundamentals. Typically, in practice, that means that if you have some employee or some person that maybe it's not performing best, but it's also not the war, so we kind of go with it. We always kind of go on with these things. So in terms of smart fundraising, I think startups should never necessarily fundraise when you're in the need for money. I think you need to contact investors when the need is not there. At the beginning, you need to get them to used to the journey, and then fundraise when it's practical. It gives you much better leverage. And the last one, maybe very obvious, it's obviously the work ethic and dedication. Sounds very obvious, but then, and everyone kind of goes with it, but I see a lot of founders raising investment rounds and then celebrating them and taking vacation and so on. Or founders taking vacation at all, or weekends, or keeping their high school friends. So this is something that we didn't really understand how they can do it. But the ultimate rule was always focus and consistency. So everything we've kind of done, we've looked through this lens. To wrap up, if I was talking a bit more on what I think we've done well and the key takeaways, then a few things that's what not to do. I think in talking to founders, I'd really advise against changing your plans per investors' feedback. I'm obviously not talking about your shareholders and investors there, but when you're in this fundraising process and when you're pitching to 10 different investors per day, every investor, of course, is going to tell you, if you adjust this or if you do this differently, then you kind of fall into my investment thesis. But then if you go from one meeting to another, then basically all you can do is full-time just changing the business model. So that doesn't make sense. Then the second one, I call it, you should always do a pregnancy test. So of course, company has a lot of challenges. It's what company is there for. But these problems really tire you at some point. And a lot of times, it's very convenient if you just don't deal with it. The problem of that is that after some time, it emerges again, and at that time the problem is much bigger. So what we always say is make a pregnancy test and deal with it at the time. And the last one, don't be afraid to let people go. We always seen it as our company, as a company that we want to be comfortable with, and yeah, it's something that we always prioritized. Hope you enjoyed the journey and that sparked some conversation.
Thank you very much. If you could just stay, Miha, for just a few minutes. What I really liked about your presentation was obviously you were talking about the scaling process, but you actually gave a bit of a window into what it means to be an entrepreneur. The need for focus, for agility, for persistence, all the things that you need to build a business and create something from nothing. If you had to think kind of back sort of where you were in 2019, what would you tell your 2019 self about building this business? Don't bother, it's too much work, or do this instead of that? What would you say?
Yeah, be less dumb.
Be less dumb.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I think if we would do a proper research back then and we would realize how tough the business is and that the competition already exists and that the market is actually not there yet, then probably we wouldn't go into it. So it's very interesting that we approach it from a pure competition standpoint. We went there to compete and we said, okay, we're going to find a way to make it, and we were just very consistent trying to do that. So yeah, probably with the knowledge I have today, maybe I wouldn't go same path, but I'm very happy, of course, that yeah, we pushed through.
Well, sometimes the secret to being a successful entrepreneur is the fact that you don't know what you're getting yourself into, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't even get started. So anyway, thank you very much. It was very inspiring. Thank you, Miha, for your presentation.